Good evening, staff, students, and parents, and welcome. I thank all of you for your attendance for this year's Grade 11 Subject Selection Night. Tonight is about making you all aware of your options moving into senior school. Your chosen subjects for these upcoming years play a big part in what your after-schooling experience will look like. Be that picking 3 sciences and 2 mathematics and going into medicine, or doing legal studies to meet prerequisites for a law degree. But you also must understand that what you pick now doesn't have to be your forever. Now is the best time for you to try new things. That's why we have so many lovely staff members here to talk to you about the subjects we offer you. If you don't know what you want to do after school, I greatly recommend that you take every opportunity that comes to you. It may not seem like something that you could see yourself doing in the future, but you should take that experience and learn from it. The things you could learn could be a specialized skill that can go down on a resume, or confirmation that you don't want to continue in that field, or it could be the exact opposite. My own experience in a subject like specialist mathematics has not only taught me a lot about math, but also a lot of study skills that I lacked before. It hasn't been an easy subject, but it has taught me a lot about myself. I've learnt that I need a creative outlet if I want to combat the intense straightforwardness of the subject. I wouldn't have known that, and I probably would have ended up in a very straightforward career if I didn't take the risk and try something new and scary. It is one of the best times to try something new, so I recommend that you take the time to talk to as many of our staff members about their subjects and find what would be best for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Taylor. So, what are we going to be doing tonight? So, we're going to have a look at a couple of systems in Queensland. So, that's the QCE system, or Queensland Institute of Education system. ATAR. We'll also have a look at how we go about selecting our curriculum, so what options are available for us. And then the final thing will be actually how do we fill out the form for the process for starting to build the timetable. So the first body that you need to know a little bit about is the Queensland Curriculum and Assessment Authority, or as everyone else will call it, QCAA. So QCAA is a government statutory body, and for our purposes, they do a lot of things, but for our purposes, we're looking at 2 main things that they will oversee, which is the senior school system and that qualification, which is the QCE, but also they are the body that will provide the final results at the end of Year 12 in terms of senior statements and so on. As I said, one of the main things that they do is do the QCE, and that's something that we would like all of our students to have the opportunity to graduate with. Now, there are similarities and differences between the 2 systems of the QCE and the ATAR, and sometimes the differences are a little bit subtle, sometimes they're a little bit more obvious. But you need to get 20 credits in order to achieve a QCE. Now, you can get those credits from school subjects, whether they be general subjects or applied subjects, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. You can get them from VET qualifications, as long as they're a Certificate 2 or higher, from university courses, and we've got some representatives from JCU and CQ University here for you to be able to talk to tonight. And also other recognised studies. So I've just got an example there, AMEB at a grade 4 or higher. There are a lot of other places where you can achieve those QCE credits. Pardon me. There's also a certain patterns that you need to follow for getting that QCE, and one of those is to do core studies. And again, most of our students will achieve that just by doing their school subjects. Essentially a minimum of doing 3 subjects with passing each unit, and that'll give you 4 credits. You can do it from getting a Certificate 2 qualification. You can grab 4 credits for that. For Cert 3 and 4, you can grab up to 8 credits, and for a school-based apprenticeship, up to 6 credits. We'll talk about the differences between those types of qualifications as we get a little bit further through. You also need to satisfy literacy and numeracy requirements. And again, most of that will happen automatically by simply passing a unit of a math subject or an English subject. In fact, most of our students will have achieved the literacy requirement by the end of Year 10, because the literacy short course, which we run through Year 10, is also a way of achieving that literacy achievement for the QCE, requirement for the QCE. The other body that is really important is QTAC, which is the Queensland Tertiary Admissions Centre, and I will talk pretty much only about QTAC today. However, every state has their own TAC, or Tertiary Admissions Centre. So, for example, if you're in Victoria, it's VTAC, and so if you wish to attend a Victorian university, you would be applying through VTAC, not QTAC. The majority of our students will apply for Queensland universities. The processes are very similar from state to state, however. So they do two main jobs for us. One, they are the company that calculates ATARs, and they also do, pardon me, the administration of that tertiary entrance process for our Year 12 students as they are transitioning from school to university. So a little bit more about that Australian Tertiary Admissions Rank, or ATAR. So it is now used in all Australian states and territories. Queensland was the last one to go across to it. We used to have the OP system. So the ATAR, its only use is to determine a ranking. It's an academic ranking for university entrance. So if you don't wish to attend university, you need to realise that ATAR is unimportant. You may get one just by the nature of the subjects you choose, but the number itself would be unimportant for you. It is a rank. It is a rank based upon your academic position relative to every other student in the state. And there's a 2,000 point scale. So the very highest ATAR that's possible is 99.95, right down to 0, in increments of 0.05. It's essentially a percentile ranking. So if you get an ATAR of 99.95, means your academic ranking is above 99.95% of other students in the state. If you did happen to end up with an ATAR below 30, they will just report it as 30 or less. Again, you need to qualify for an ATAR. Not everyone will qualify for an ATAR because it's not necessarily what they wish to do. To be eligible for an ATAR, you can either do 5 subjects, general subjects across Unit 3 and 4, or you can do 4 general subjects across Year 3 and 4 and another option. And that other option could be an applied subject, or it could be a Certificate 3 or above course for a VET qualification. So the difference there is for a QCE, a Certificate 2 or higher will do, but for an ATAR you would need to do a Certificate 3 or higher. Really important to note though that those applied subjects and those VET subjects, those certificate subjects for ATAR would tend to scale lower than those general subjects. And we'll talk a little bit about scaling soon. Pardon me. There are certain combinations of subjects that you can't use together to make an ATAR, and typically we don't really find students wishing to do it anyway, but for the sake of clarity I'll point them out. So you can't do a general subject and an applied subject of the same type for your ATAR. So for example, you can't do English, which is a general subject, and applied English and have them both contribute towards an ATAR. You can do it, but they can't both contribute towards an ATAR. However, you can do that for general subjects. So a classic example is mathematical methods and specialist mathematics. You can do both of those subjects and have them both contribute towards your ATAR. And the same with English and English and Literature Extension. They both can contribute towards ATAR. English is a really important subject in general, but particularly around ATAR. It is the only subject that has a minimum requirement. So you need to make sure that you have a C or better in an English subject. So that could be Essential English or General English across Units 3 and 4. Having said that, English doesn't have to be a contributing subject towards your ATAR. So they will take your best 5 subjects. If English happens to be your lowest subject, then it doesn't have to contribute to your ATAR. In other states, it does. I will also say, though, that if you are looking at going to university, English, which again is the general subject, is a prerequisite for a lot of university courses. So that's really, really important. What I've got there is a little snip from the QTAC Year 10 guide, which I've emailed to the girls this afternoon, which shows a little bit in the prerequisites for university subjects, which is one of the things we'll look at. And it says in this case that English Units 3 and 4 at a C or better is what's required to get into that Bachelor of Nursing program. It has a little R for recommended studies for biology, chemistry, and one of general mathematics, mathematical methods, or specialist mathematics. Those are subjects that they would recommend you do if you are wanting to go into that particular university course, but it's not a necessity. You can not do those and still qualify for the course. As I said, I'll come back to subject scaling and the ATAR. So not all subjects are as easy or difficult as each other. There are differences between subjects. And those differences are different for different people as well. So we go through a process of inter-subject scaling. So at the end of year 12, you will have done unit 3 and 4, and you will have a raw score, which is a score out of 100, which is simply put the total of all the assessments that you've done for that year. Now what they'll then do is have a look at how students performed those different subjects and different combinations of subjects. And using that information, they determine which subjects were for that particular cohort easier or harder. And of course, when we're talking about an academic ranking, if you are doing well in a subject that is harder, then you probably should get some reward for doing that. And that's what the scaling takes care of. It is important to note that there are lots of ATAR calculators and ATAR estimators and so on. They're always basing their information on old data because the information is calculated at the end of grade 12 for every cohort. So we never really know what the scaling will be until after it all occurs. But we can look for patterns over a period of years. So here's an example. So we've got a student who studies mathematical methods and scores 65 out of 100. Now, if she had done general mathematics, she may have scored a higher grade, 75 out of 100, because for most students, general maths is easier than mathematical methods. So in the process of scaling, her mathematical method score may have been scaled up to 70 out of 100 because it was a difficult subject. The general maths may have scaled down to 70. So that's the idea behind what's going on. So regardless of the subject, it's trying to give a measure of academic ability, regardless of the subjects that you're doing. And it should reflect your actual ability. Pardon me, certificate courses and scaling and ATARs. As I said, if you do a certificate 3 or higher, then it can contribute to an ATAR. It's important to note that the content of the certificate course is irrelevant. All certificate 3s will be scaled the same. A certificate 4 would be higher than a certificate 3, etc. And as I said, the minimum of cert 3 is required. And as I've already said again, but just reiterating, generally speaking, a vet qualification would scale low in that scaling process compared to general subjects. It is important to know as well that for some courses at some universities, they may use a certificate course as a way to get into university rather than through an ATAR. So an ATAR is the way that most students will use, will gain university entrance, but there are other ways as well. Generally, you would need a Cert 4 or higher, and there is no set rules around that. Each university will have their own rules. And again, if anyone wants assistance with that, I can work with you if that's something that you're interested in looking at. All right, so that's a lot about our system. So let's have a look at some of the options that we've got for our curriculum. So the things you can do are our general subjects and our applied subjects. You can do certificate courses. You can do school-based traineeships, school-based apprenticeships, university courses, and other recognised studies such as AMEB, grade 4 or higher. So let's break those down into the categories and see what they actually mean. So for our general and applied subjects, we offer 19 different general subjects for year 11 and 12. In year 12, we pick up another couple of options. So that's some extension subjects, which are English and Literature extension and music extension. And in fact, there's a couple of different music extension subjects that you can do. And then we've got some applied subjects, which are the ones that would, for ATAR at least, scale a little bit lower. For QCE, has no difference. As always, with a timetable, we need to make sure we have a minimum number of students to make a subject viable. So if we have a student wanting to do a subject and they're the only person wanting to do it, it makes it very difficult to keep that offering going. So just giving some heads up on the way. Some points to consider with those general and applied subjects. They are developmental, some more so than others, and they are meant to be studied over a 2-year period. So both QCAA and Girls Grammar advise against doing subject changes, so we're trying to get it as right as we possibly can now for the next 2 years. Having said that, there are going to be some cases where it doesn't work out as we hope, and we will still look at what the right thing is to do at any point in time. But as much as possible, we want to get it right. We try and avoid overcommitment to external spelling mistake factors, such as work. And so keeping a balance is really important, and not doing too much in one particular area is important. In the curriculum guide, which has been sent out, subjects will have a minimum entry requirement, a suggested one, for your chosen subjects in the handbook. So if you don't meet that requirement, but you think that it's still the right subject, we'll have a conversation and discuss the best outcome. So the last sentence there is really, really important. Be aspirational, reach for what you want to do, but also be realistic. So, you know, in grade 10, if you're really struggling with essential mathematics, it would not make a lot of sense to try and go into mathematical methods, which is a much harder mathematical subject. So keep reality in your mind as well. For general subjects around assessment, that's quite important. All general subjects will have all subjects will have 4 assessments. For general subjects, there are 3 internal, and there's an external examination at the end of year 12. For different types of subjects, the way that's structured is a little bit different as well. So science and mathematics subjects, the exam is based upon unit 3 and 4, so that's a whole year's worth of work, and it is worth half of your overall grade. So it's a little bit more high stakes for those math and science subjects. One of the reasons why they often scale a little bit higher. For the arts, the examination will be based upon the whole year's worth of work, but it'll only be worth 25% of your final grade. And for all other subjects, then it is based only on Unit 4, so half a year's worth of work, and only worth 25% of your grade. With very few exceptions, you will know what your results are for all your internal assessments before you go into external exams, so you'll have a pretty good idea what you need to achieve. We also do mock exams, so our grade 12s are going to do that at the end of this term. So we have some practice at the types of processes that go on during exams. For our applied subjects, again, 4 assessments across unit 3 and 4, which is our fashion subject and hospitality practices subjects. We also have a slight difference for essential mathematics and essential English, where we have what we call a common internal assessment, which is set by QCAA, but we mark ourselves, whereas the external exams are marked externally as well. For vet certificate courses, essentially the structure of those is that you would undertake them with an external RTO, such as CQ University. There is no paid employment for them. Typically, you would drop a subject in order to gain the time required to do that. There is funding that's available for those courses. It's important to note that you get one group of that funding. So if you do a course, you have one opportunity to use that funding, and then it's gone. You can still do further cert courses, but they start costing a lot more money. And they are competency-based. A traineeship essentially is a very similar situation, except that it has a work component to it. And so it involves paid employment, which is typically 1 day a week, but again, one subject less, and it's competency-based. For an apprenticeship, again, very similar. However, you are aiming to do a trade qualification rather than the certificate traineeship qualification. Earlier on, we saw that a traineeship might end up with 8 QCE points, whereas an apprenticeship might only end up with 6. And the reason being is that a traineeship you can finish whilst you're at school, but a school-based apprenticeship, you would transition to be a full-time apprentice at the end of school. You won't be able to get that finished in the time at school. For university courses, so we've got CQ University, Start University now, or SUN, and we've got JCU now, which have a lot of additional opportunities, particularly if you really do know that you want to do a particular course at university. A lot of options are available to you to get that started whilst you're still at school. If you do a university course while you're at school, often that will provide an automatic entry into a relevant degree, not always. And there are other universities that offer similar programs, such as UQ. They have their Enhanced Studies program, or ESP, but the offerings are far more limited unless you're a Brisbane school student. Okay, so our curriculum process, how do we go about selecting it? So I talked to the girls this morning and I said, essentially we're looking at everyone really is following one of three things to a pathway. So once you finish year 12, you're heading to employment, or heading to further vet studies, or you're heading to university. Really, that's our three options. And so we're heading in any of those, which are all equally valid. If you're heading in that employment or that vet pathway, you can be choosing applied subjects, you can be choosing general subjects, you can be choosing cert courses, traineeships, apprenticeships. All you need to do is make sure that you're going to be QCE eligible. For university, there's a few more things that you need to take into account. Yes, you need to make sure you're QCE eligible, but you also need to make sure that the curriculum you're choosing makes you ATAR eligible. So a minimum of 4 general subjects, and the 5th option being an applied or a certificate course 3 or higher. Prerequisites, I showed you earlier a little bit of a prerequisite for that nursing course where it said you needed to do English. So I've emailed out the girls the 2028 Year 10 QTAC guide this afternoon. That's got some information in it about what will be needed for the subjects now for when the girls leave and study at university in 2028. If you are after a highly competitive university course, then you really need to be a little bit more careful. So the classic example is medicine, which is probably the most competitive courses to get into. And so you really need to be very careful about the subjects you're choosing because of the scaling. So if that is the case, you're looking at a really competitive course, when we meet over this next week, we'll have to have those discussions to make sure that you're choosing subjects that are going to give you the opportunity to get where you want to go. And of course, there are other requirements sometimes for particular courses. So UCAT is often used for medicine or dentistry. It's a separate examination. If you're into performance arts, there might be auditions you need to do. If you're into the fashion field, you might need to have portfolios of work. All that information is available in that guide now. Okay, so when it gets down to it, what should you do? So you really should be doing the things that you've got an ability in, that are lining up to your post-school aspirations, that are consistent with your skills that you have, your knowledge and your attitude to life, and importantly, things that you believe you'll enjoy. If you're going to pick up subjects that you think you should do but don't really enjoy them, then you're probably going to end up in a pathway that you're not going to enjoy. So you've really got to follow the things that you want to do. What are we trying to do? Basically get the best possible achievements and academic results for you to get you where you want to go. So the things to do are, you've got the curriculum handbook. Make sure you read through that really carefully. Have discussions with your teachers, clearly your parents as well. Everyone needs to do a core English subject, everyone needs to do a core mathematics subject, and then you have 4 other elective options. Now in that form, I've got a space for 2 reserve preferences. What I do is I take the information and I start constructing the timetable based upon what people want to do. It is rare that I could get it to work for 100% of people, so there might be some people that have to take a reserve preference. I would suggest that is usually a handful of students that need to do that, but it is the reality of constructing timetables. Yes, so over the next week I'm going to be meeting with every girl, starting tomorrow going through to next Monday. We will look at the set plan, have a look, making sure that the decisions seem right. We're then going to send that information home to mum and dad, who we're going to ask to sign off on it or contact me for more information or come in for a meeting for further discussions. And If okay, everything's on track, then by Monday the 4th of August, we'd like that approved parental permission form back at the school. That allows me to start work on the timetable on Tuesday the 5th of August. And of course, there's always discussions. If you do make choices now, really why we're doing this so early in the year is so that I can get work on the timetable. If you decide that you wish to make changes later in the year or the start of next year, that's going to be fine. It'll just have to fit in with the structure of the timetable at that point in time. All right, so this is the most important part of the evening, which is where you go and have the opportunity to talk to your teachers and university representatives about the subject. So make sure you're asking plenty of questions, asking about the content of the subject, whether the teachers think you might be a good fit based upon what your results are currently and things that you enjoy. I'll leave this on the screen for the next hour or so. Essentially, we've got who you can talk to for any subject. As I said, thank you so much for coming. I'll also be available roving around. Mrs. Miller-War will be roving around as well, talking to people about academic support and VET in general, particularly about traineeships and apprenticeships, if that's something that you're interested in. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.